online, but each municipality has to publish it within 30 days of it being released. It was released 2 days ago, so we have to post it and then.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. We're going to have a little guest speaker here. This is Fire Chief Bernie Molloy and his able assistant Rachel. And we also have two of our EPC heads, Jackie Price and Mike Nunez. So we're going to have a little discussion about evacuation procedures, emergency procedures, different things like that. We had a nice talk. The chief and Rachel came in on about 2 weeks ago at the EPC meeting, had a nice talk about an hour. And this is going to be recorded, so just make sure you turn off your cell phones, please. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to the chief and let him roll with it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. All right, so for introductions, my name is Bernie Molloy. I'm the fire chief for Murrieta Fire and Rescue. I've been the fire chief in our city for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years. And with me today is Rachel Hollinger. She's the disaster preparedness coordinator and emergency manager for the city of Murrieta, and we work together for the fire department. So we're going to do a couple of things here today. I know there's a lot of questions, and I definitely want to engage in questions and answers after we give a presentation, but we want to talk a little bit about the fire department and everything we're doing, show you some of the things the fire department does for you every single day, and then we can get into some of the specifics about evacuation, how we do evacuation planning, what we do there. Rachel's going to cover some, I'm going to cover some. But first, we just released our annual report, so I want to show you what we do every single year in our city to serve the publics. So we had over 12,000 calls for service last year. What this is 12,000 times somebody called 911 with an emergency that needed the fire department. And those emergencies can range from medical aids, fires, any public assistance that somebody doesn't know how to solve and they need the fire department to help with. So that's 12,285 times someone called 911 and the door on a fire station rolled up and we pulled a fire engine out to help the public. Over 8,000 of those are medical aids. We know that this is one of the most important things we do in the fire department. Almost all of us on our fire department are paramedics, even me. And I had help from Sharon, who was actually trained me to be a paramedic. I won't say how long ago, I promise. So, yeah, no problem. No, that was for me. That was for me. I won't share because. So we do a lot of paramedic work. We do a lot of emergency assistance to you, and you know that in this neighborhood. We come in here regularly, and we do that from a couple of different platforms. We do it from either a fire engine or one of our medic patrols. Whatever you get in our city that has red lights on top of it, however, has a paramedic on board, and it has paramedic equipment in it. So we're very well set up to serve the community for anything medical related. Then the other things, we had 179 fires, good service calls. Those are when we go out, somebody's locked out of their car or something like that. We have about 800 of those calls. 81 hazmats in the city last year. Technical rescues or any vehicle accident that requires extrication, tools to get out, or sometimes we get people stuck in a fence. This happens. We get all kinds of those calls. And then about 1,900 other calls, those are traffic collisions, things like that. So how we spread that workload out from around our city, we do it by apparatus. And your closest fire station 2 right here on Cal Oaks, has the busiest 2 units in this, the busiest unit, it's the busiest fire station in the city. That's Medic Patrol 2. Our medic patrols have 2 firefighter paramedics on them, and they come with full ALS equipment. So all of the medical equipment we carry on a fire engine comes on that apparatus. Medic Patrol 2, which is right next to you, is our busiest unit in the city. It runs over 3,000 calls a year. Medic Patrol 3, down on Whitewood, is our second busiest. And then our engines follow in line. So you can see Fire Station 2 has over 3,500 calls, and a lot of those calls are into this neighborhood. You know that. I think there was one right before we got here, as there usually is. So how we spread our fire stations out throughout the city. This is a map of Murrieta behind me, and you can see where our fire stations are. They're the red dots. We're very well served for most of our city. There is one area we're working on building another fire station up in the top right corner of the city. out off Clinton Keith. We're working on property acquisition in that area because it's an area of the city that's developed that we didn't have a fire station in. And so that will be our next fire station in the future. We don't have an exact timeline on that, but these things take a lot of time to get through. So we're working on that process right now of developing another fire station. And you can see the call numbers. Station 2, again, we had over 5,000 unit responses. A unit response is different than an incident. An incident, for one incident, we may have 5 units respond to it. If there's a structure fire, that pulls 5 fire engines and a medic patrol and a chief officer. So you get 7 unit responses for that one. This area of the city, because it's basically the center of the city, is our busiest area. So we have the highest number of unit responses into this area as well. What I'm trying to show there is that this area is very busy. And it's not just your neighborhood, but it's because the center of the city is generally where we have the most density for now. That's changing a little bit. So our EMS activity, we break this down and we classify it by the type of things that we have. Cardiac arrest, what's really interesting with our cardiac arrest, we had 24% return of circulation. That means 24% of the 149 people that we arrived at, and they were unresponsive, had no pulse, were not breathing, 24% of those people were delivered to the hospital with a pulse. That's a testament to the work that we do, that our paramedics do, in getting people, reviving them. That's a great number, because that's a lot of people that are walking around today that were passed when our paramedics arrived with them. Yeah, thank you. They're much better paramedics than I am now. I don't do it that much, but I'm glad we have such great paramedics still. And you can see, we transported over 5,000 patients out of the city as well, so that's a high number of transports from us as well. We are not the transport provider. I wish we had our own ambulances. We have a great partner in AMR though, so AMR ambulances do our transport for us. And then you can see our top 5 medications that we use there. Should not surprise anybody that has worked in our industry. Oxygen counts, saline counts, that's an IV, and then Epi, Zofran, and albuterol are our other medications. So fire suppression last year, I talked about 179 fires. When we break those down, 61 of those were vegetation fires, 49 structure fires, 33 rubbish fires. Outdoor fires, just like an illegal burn, 1 mobile home fire, and then total of 179 fires. So 61 vegetation fires. I know we're going to get to that because that's a big concern for our community. And we all watched a few months ago on the news what it looks like when a vegetation fire turns into an urban conflagration fire. We're used to seeing vegetation fires. We are used to seeing fires spread to the edges of cities and us stopping the fires there. However, when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds and that spread gets into the community, and then that community, the houses, become the fuel for the fire, that's a different type of fire. That's an urban conflagration, and that fire keeps moving house to house. Our industry has to figure that one out. If this was a wildland fire, we would take a bulldozer and push down a bunch of trees. We can't do the same thing with houses. We can't say we're going to draw our line in the sand there and we're going to push through a bunch of houses with the bulldozer, so that's where we can stop it. What we can do is do great fire prevention, do a lot of weed clearing, and enforce the regulations that we have in the California Fire Code to make sure that we're doing everything we can to prepare from these wildland fires from becoming fires that are introduced into our built environment. So something we continue to work on. This is a copy of our annual report. We have the annual report that you can scan and download, and we're going to have QR codes throughout. We have some handouts in the back as well that we can get to you, and you can get any of this information online as well. So that was just a coverage of what we have done in the past year. We have one of these for the past 3 years that I've been the fire chief. You can go on our website and see, and you can see the increase. We had almost 6% growth in call volume this year, and I can say that going forward this year already, we're seeing numbers that are even higher than that. So we're anticipating a great call volume increase this year as well. Our community is changing. You don't have to go far outside of these gates to see that all of the high density housing that's being built in this city is going to have an impact on our fire department. It's going to have an impact on our call volume. We are built to absorb that, and we are lucky to be in a city that our city council is completely invested in making sure you have the fire department that you deserve to have in the city, so they are investing in us as well and letting us grow as this happens. One point that I would make, we just had this flu season. I know a lot of people in this room probably succumbed to this. We had a 19% increase in call volume from January to January. From last January to this January, we had a 19% increase in call volume because of the flu. So that's how one small introduction of some pathogen in our community can have a tremendous impact on our resources. Like I said, that was the look past of the past year. I'm going to actually turn it over to Rachel to do some conversation about Murrieta Ready and what we're doing to prepare our community for disasters. And then after Rachel, we'll have Q&A as well and talk about evacuation and all of your questions. Rachel Hollinger, Emergency Manager.
I'm a little shorter. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us out today. As Chief mentioned, I'm just going to talk about some general preparedness. How can you be ready for some of the disasters? So the first thing we want to do is we want to know what the hazards in our community are. Then we're asking, once you're aware of those hazards, make a plan, and each hazard may require you to make adjustments to that plan. Prepare your home, make a home kit and a go bag, join the CERT team, and locate emergency information and updates. So the local hazards, you can find these in our local hazard mitigation plan. This is where key members in the city get together and we come up with a listing of all the different hazards we feel this community may face. And this is based on historical data, trends, etc. So you could see earthquake is our #1 hazard. While this may not be the most likely hazard, we feel like it would be most impactful to the community if we have a higher magnitude. #2, wildfire, and you could see 3 is electrical failures. I have that one bolded out because, as some of you may have known, recently in January, we experienced a series of electrical failures with the power safety power shutoffs. So I'm going to discuss those a little bit more in detail later in the presentation. Make a plan. So evacuations. Where do we evacuate to? Do you have friends or family that are out of the hazard area that you can go to? Are you aware of the different shelters that may be available within the city or outside of the hazard area? Consider routes to take. Know the primary exit routes. We have the 15 and the 215. You can go to either one of those as a primary exit. Shelter. Location, mass care shelter in place. So there may be a time where we say, hey, we don't necessarily need you to evacuate, but we want you to shelter in place within your home. We'll talk about the supplies needed in your home kit in order to do that. Communication, emergency contact info. Backup communication. If we don't have cellular service because maybe either the cell phone lines are down because an earthquake disrupted the equipment, or there's too many people trying to access the cell phone. So having a backup communication plan with your family. Emergency services. Know the nearest hospitals and keep medical contact information readily available. Prepare financially. So have cash reserves and keep cash on hand. If we experience an electrical failure, we may not be able to use our debit ATM cards, so having that cash in a waterproof container is really good to have. Rehearse, have the discussion, prepare the family emotionally. So part of building the resiliency is talking with your family members and just rehearsing this in your mind. So building that mental preparedness. So when we talk about preparing your home, what does that consist of? Chief mentioned a little bit about weed and vegetation management. So having that defensible space, making sure there's items around your property that wouldn't necessarily be easy to catch on fire. Fire extinguishers and alarms. Have a fire extinguisher in your home. Test your alarms, your smoke alarms monthly. Flood mitigation. If we're expecting a flood, do your sandbags. We typically offer them at stations 1 and 2. So we allow 10 sandbags per Murrieta resident. Earthquake proofing, so knowing where your utility gas shutoff is. Have earthquake hooks, hanging hooks for your pictures, making sure that your larger appliances, dressers, TVs are all secured with a specific hatch so they won't fall over in the event of an earthquake. Make a home kit. I won't go too in depth into this as I do have a handout for each of you to take, but just some basic things that I want you to ask yourself is, what would you need to stay warm? If it's cold when this happens, do you have something to stay warm? If it's hot, how are you going to keep cool? Do you have food and water, and what are you storing this in? Where are you storing it? How are you going to be able to see in the dark? If you have canned goods, do you have a manual can opener? So what's going to give you some sort of comfort and relief? If you're going through this, having something in your kit that's just going to provide you with that break from all of the stress of what's going on. When it comes to your go bag, we want you to have a 72-hour supply of food and water. Something to consider is your pets, and for those that it applies to, having baby necessities as well. So blankets, change of clothes, flashlights with your spare batteries. Make sure you don't store your batteries in your flashlight long term because it does lead to that corrosion. Any survival tools, and NOAA hand crank emergency radio. So you'll sometimes see us offer these out. You can find them on Amazon. They're solar powered, battery powered, or you can hand crank it and it'll provide you enough power to at least turn on the radio, and there's some that can even charge your phone and use as a flashlight. Dust mask, childcare, special needs, any things that you may need for any ailments, prescriptions, cash, waterproof folder for important documents. Join CERT. So this is our community emergency response team. I know some of you may have already joined the team, but with this, we give you specific survival skills, so to speak, that teach you how to not only mediate what's going on with the hazard of your house, but your neighbors. And essentially, you go door to door, you're checking for damage, you're seeing if anyone's in the home, does anyone need help? You're able to provide them a basic triage and basic level of first aid care until emergency responders can help assist. We talked about emergency alerts, so signing up for emergency notifications. What we recently launched within the city is Genesis Protect. This is our evacuation app and alert and warning software. So it provides zone-based evacuations. The city is broken up into multiple zones. The way it's structured is each zone has a primary and secondary exit, and there's about 10,000 rooftops per zone. So that's how it was structured to decide the way that the zones were designed. So one thing that we're asking you to do is to download Genesis Protect onto your phones. You can also access it via a website. I'll have that QR code at the end that you'll be able to do. And then when we get to that, I want you guys to go ahead and download it and just do a little test. Plug in your address and it'll pop up with what zone that you're in. We're able to communicate the emergency alerts, so we'll provide you emergency information as far as where there's a shelter, where the hazard may be, what protective action we're expecting you to take, whether it's evacuate now, prepare to evacuate, or maybe a shelter in place. And this is based on geolocation. So we send out the wireless emergency alert within a particular zone, and it pings all the cell phone within that geolocated area. Along with that, we're asking you to sign up for Alert Rivco. So Alert Rivco is designed that if you are out of the area, say you're not within the zone, you're visiting friends or family up in Corona or wherever it may be, you can have that alert still sent to your phone saying, hey, there's a hazard within the area of your home address that you identified. So that's the difference between Alert Rivco and Genesis Protect. Genesis Protect will be based off your cell phone. Alert Rivco, you register your address. And we have a QR code at the end for that as well. This is just a little picture of what the Genesis Protect website looks like. You could see the search address bar there, and then it'll pop up with your zone.
And anybody that watched the wildfires, what you saw being displayed on the 2 wildfires were those Genesis layers. On the news, they were showing the evacuation sites. That's Genesis in action. So that's what it looks like, where it's yellow if it's a warning, it's red if it's actually an evacuation. We have that here. We have used it in the city. We just haven't had a conflagration fire like they did, where it ended up on national news.
Okay, so what's the city's response to all this? So MFR and MPD will evaluate primary response areas and conduct windshield surveys. This would be something for like if it was an earthquake level. We identify the areas that are impacted, structural damage and utilities, infrastructure damage, and injuries. From there, we would determine whether or not we need to evaluate our Emergency Operations Center. We call that our EOC. We activate it based on emergency operation plans and results from the windshield survey. Key city officials discuss and concur on the evacuation. If the EOC is activated, EOC members, city manager, and city council are all notified. Information and data collection occur in the EOC. Objectives are identified for an operational period, and resources are managed and controlled. Resources are coordinated at all levels of the government. So within the EOC, we coordinate from the city to the county up through the state, depending on how big the disaster is. So I mentioned I wanted to get in a little bit more in depth about electrical failures. In November and in January, we experienced a series of power safety public shutoffs, and this is SoCal Edison's action that they are taking to mitigate the risk of a wildfire, essentially. So the key reasons they decided to do this, like I said, prevent wildfires, public safety, extreme weather conditions. What was going on during those is we had the high Santa Ana winds. So we're experiencing gusts up to 100 miles per hour in certain areas. Regulatory and liability concerns. If SoCal Edison were not to turn off their equipment and there was a wildfire, then they could be potentially held liable for that. So when does it occur? High wind speeds, low humidity levels when we're looking at below 20% of moisture, red flag warnings, and drought conditions with high fuel loads. How does it work? So electricity is all interconnected from different generation stations to customers. So you can see here, I have generation as the first step. This is how they make it, whether it comes from water, hydroelectric dams, whether it comes from nuclear energy, etc. There's multiple different ways we can generate it. Then it goes to transmission, to substations, and then distribution to the customer. So what does that all mean? It means there's miles and miles of network of transmission lines that can be impacted. There's multiple facilities that can be impacted. So these are all connected. If any one of these along the way to getting to you, the electricity getting to you, the customer, is impacted by the high winds, then they determine that we're going to shut off this location. Everything down the line from that is then impacted. I have an example here of the different circuits within a city. This isn't the city of Marietta. This is just an example of the potential circuits. So there's multiple circuits within a city. And what this means is maybe you have electricity, but your neighbor doesn't. So there's just the segments that run along. Things we want you to do during a PSPS event and after are watch for wires. So the whole purpose of it, right? High winds. High winds can knock down the wires. If you see an electrical wire down, we're asking that you don't approach it, you stay away, and you call 911. Preparedness kit. We talked about that, making sure you have a kit specifically for electrical failures. We want you to have the flashlights, batteries, cash, and first aid. Prepare your home. Consider battery power walls and generators. So for my house, for example, I had a plug installed into my a circuit breaker, and then I bought an 8,500 kilowatt generator. So now I just plug the generator into my circuit breaker and it'll power certain functions of my house. It's just an action I chose to take to at least have my refrigerator and my lights running.
They shut the power off on the emergency manager as well. That was the lesson there.
Yes, I was actually, side note, I was at work handling all this stuff for the city, and then by the time I made it home to my kids, they're outside with lanterns in the dark. So I felt very bad. We ended up going to a hotel. Trees and vegetation. Prepare now for severe weather conditions. Submit a tree trimming request. So you can do that by calling this 1-800 number if you observe trees that are dead or dying. One of the things they want you to know is that if it's not on personal property, they'll come out and do it. If it's on your personal property, they say that this is SE&E says that you're responsible, but still give them a call, because if it's up against an electrical line, they want to make sure that that's shut down in order for you to trim the tree properly. Emergency alerts and information, we talked about it. Genesis Protect, download that. Also the My SCE app, specifically for PSPS events. Plan for medical needs. If you are reliant on any medical devices, there are programs that SCE has for critical medical baseline. So if you have a medical device that you are reliant on for life-sustaining services, they may provide you with a smaller backup battery that can power that medical device. We in the city did set up a warming and charging station. We had one at the library and we had one at the senior center. So residents could come in, charge their cell phones. I believe some hearing aids were charged there, and they also stored medicine at the senior center. So any medicine that had to be refrigerated. So that is something that we will strive to continuously offer throughout these PS events. Watch for traffic signals. We lost power to multiple traffic signals. We do have backup batteries on them that are supposed to last 48 hours. As we found out, it doesn't always last 48 hours. So what we did to mitigate that is we took backup batteries from signals that were working and put them on the ones that weren't, and we kept rotating them out. And then we also did additional things like put up additional stop signs to help mitigate that. But still keep an eye out, and you're always more than welcome to call us if you see a signal is out. Maybe we haven't put anything into place to help mitigate that yet. Give us a call. Secure trash and debris. This is a high wind event, so make sure anything that could possibly fly away in your back or front yard, secure it. As I mentioned, here are the different QR codes that we have. We have the Alert Rivco QR code that you can sign up for to do when you're out of the area. It'll at least your residents registered within the system, so we could still push out an alert to you. Become a subscriber to our monthly newsletter. All the things that we talked about today and more, we put out regularly in our newsletter. And know your zone. So we have the Apple Store QR code and the Google Play QR code. So if you guys could if you have your phones with you now, if you could do a little homework for me and just go ahead and scan the QR code for the Know Your Zone. And I want you to put in your address and see what zone you're in right now. Could somebody do that and tell me what zone we're in?
I know.
2050. All right, perfect. So right now we are in 2050. You'll see the code is
15.
2015. I stand corrected. So MUR 2015, and every different code or every different zone in Marietta will have that 3-digit identifier. MUR represents the city of Marietta, and then a 4-digit code representing the specific zone that you're in. And that is it for our presentation. And Chief, do you have anything more?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel. So whenever we have a disaster, the fire department goes out and largely manages that disaster. Rachel runs the emergency management that coordinates all the aspects she talked about in the city. So she'll be running the EOC, she'll be coordinating with county and state officials, and coordinating with the fire department. Rachel works for the fire department. We're very lucky in our city to have our emergency manager in the fire department because we run the incidents in the city, any of these large-scale disasters. So I get to work with Rachel every day, and we have a lot that we do to prepare. So we understand that a lot of what we've said is get the app, right? Like, that's where our world is. Everything is moving to get the app. But that gives us a lot of power as well, because it gives us a direct communication with you. If you have these apps on your phone, we can directly communicate with you at the drop of a hat. Another thing that we have, if we have an emergency, is we have this app notification, the Alert Rivco notification, but we also have a wireless or reverse 911 and then what's called wireless emergency alerting. Those are two other things that we're able to use. So if there were a situation where we had to evacuate the colony, we wouldn't just use the app. We have a lot of other different ways that we would do that. If we had a fire that was coming towards the colony and the fire department directed, we would go through our emergency operations center, which Rachel would be running, and would say, we need to evacuate MUR 2015, 2017, the other areas here. We would likely first put them under a warning. Warning would be the notification that get ready to go. And we understand with a community like yours, where we have some people with limited mobility, we have to give some advance notice on that. But we have to be careful, because if we do that every time we have a fire in the city, people will stop listening to us. They'll say, they never actually evacuate us, so I'm not going to do that. So we're judicious with how we do the alerts to people. But if we give you that notification to get ready, what that means is prep the go bag, prep your stuff, make sure that you're ready to go and you have a plan of where you're going to go. If there is a fire that's immediately impacting, if there's a fire that was in the houses right next to the colony and we had to get people out of the colony immediately, we would go straight to evacuation. When we went to that evacuation, it would come through Genesis, it would come through reverse 911, and it would come through what's called the wireless emergency alert. And that's kind of picture the Amber Alert that pops up on your cell phone. It makes an obnoxious noise that you can't turn off. That's another avenue. This Genesis software that Rachel showed you, we actually have a back end to that. And when we click the boxes, do the notifications and set up the evacuations, we click all of those boxes to say use all of those mechanisms to get to that evacuation. With that point of evacuation, we would give you where you're evacuating to, generally, again, if we have stood up a shelter. If there's a fire that starts and 5 minutes later we have to evacuate the colony, we won't have that shelter up yet. I can just say that. There's not enough reflex time for us to stand up the things we need to get that done. We're going to get people out of harm's way as quick as possible and start that process. So that's where it's important to stay up to date and have those apps, so as we communicate, as things change, we can communicate through those apps and reverse 911 as well. One of the issues with reverse 911 for communication is it's generally tied to a landline. And if we evacuate you, what good is reverse 911 at that point? So if we were only using that and calling your home to tell you either more information about the evacuation or more information about the incident, it wouldn't work. That's why these apps become so important to us. So what we don't always communicate is exactly how to get to the shelter. And I know that's a concern in this community. How do we evacuate from the community? Direction of travel. And this is where we just have to rely a little bit on common sense. You have 3 easy ways to get in and out of this community. We can get those gates opened. If there's an evacuation, we've already talked with property management and said, just open the gates. Make it so people can get out or in. And so we can bring in our emergency responders, some of whom, if we have a big fire, will be coming from other communities that don't have the same keys and opt-coms as us. So we just want to be able to have access to the community. And then make sure that everything is open so people have egress. If we were evacuating this community and we were going that way, to Nutmeg, we would put traffic control with our Murrieta Police Department. if they're available. If there's some conflagration going and we don't have enough units to start traffic control, we would probably do road closures so people had to get out. But all of this is situational. It's going to depend on the incident that we have. We cannot have a prescriptive plan that is one size fits all always, because that doesn't work. If the fire's coming from that way, it's a different plan if the fire's coming from this way or if the fire's coming from this way. What we can guarantee you is we will communicate through our platforms to you. That's why it's vitally important that you have access to these platforms. And we will keep communicating throughout the emergency. And I know that a lot of people want to have like exactly what do I do in the emergency. And I think the answers to that are, as Rachel mentioned, be prepared, have communication, and be ready to listen to what that communication tells you. And so that's, we're going to look at different scenarios, and I know all of you have questions. I'm excited to get to the questions because I hope that you bring things to me that I haven't even thought of, but I think we've thought of a lot for how we address the emergencies in the community. So with that, how are we doing questions? Are we coming to the podium, or I'll have someone else manage the questions. I don't want to pick favorites.
Coming?
Good morning. You're welcome.
My name's Jim Self, a fairly new resident. So CAL FIRE released their new maps on Monday.
Yes.
And naturally, I went online and pulled it up and printed and saw where the colony was and saw that in that upper northeast corner, there's a bit of a moderate and high, not very high, but going right up to Cal Oaks. And I just wanted to ask what that means for us and what is that, those new zones, if they are new, in fact, because I heard they were expanded, what that means for us here.
This is a long answer. Okay. I'm sorry. So, what you're referring to is the state very high fire severity zones. And the state of California is directed through legislation to update every 5 years the fire severity zones within the entire state of California. The last time they were done was 2008. So 8 plus 5 does not equal 2025, right? So these maps have been very delayed, and one of the reasons they're delayed is because there's a lot of questions. What does it mean? If we look at those maps truly, I know everyone ties them to insurance, and though the insurance companies swear they don't use those maps, they use similar modeling to these maps, so the insurance rates are going to look similar to these maps, and it's not like they pull the map out, but they use the same sort of modeling systems to come up with the information. What those maps do is these fire hazard severity zones have certain codes and ordinances that are tied to them. Those codes and ordinances largely used to live in building. So building codes, if you built in the very high fire severity zone that came after 2008, you had to build what's called Chapter 7A of the building code, which talks about home hardening, the types of windows you have to use, the vents you have to use, the closed eaves, construction design elements for your home. What it also does is it has a different standard of defensible space inspection. So that's where the fire department lives on that building site as well, because that's in the building code lives in the fire code for that regard. But the defensible space is where this is really going to have an impact on residents. The colony does have very high fire severity zone existing already. It's the top right corner that comes off of Cal Oaks. It's a little finger. The maps did update on Monday. They were released at 10:04 on Monday is when we got to see the maps for the very first time. By statute, the fire department, the local jurisdiction, is required to host those maps for public comment within 30 days. We already have a plan. We have everything ready to go. We have to then take public comment on those maps and read it and do nothing about it because they're not our maps, and there is no provision in the statutes that allows local jurisdictions to provide comment on the maps that they're provided. So in full fairness to the state fire marshals, they did change the laws, but it got vetoed. It did not make it through because there would have been a cost to it. So that was tried to be changed last year, so we would have been able to make comments. But in reality, looking at the maps, we don't have true insight into the science that they're using. But compared to other communities, I would say that our community was treated pretty fairly. We did expand some, and we're getting those numbers on exactly how many more parcels did we add, how many more acres did we add. But it didn't change our map by as much as I thought it would. I thought we were going to push down to the freeway basically, and we just moved in just a little bit from all of the perimeters. So what does that mean for you? In the very high fire severity zone and now the high fire severity zone, this new added, there's now 3 categories. It's very high, high, and moderate severity zones. In the very high and high, we do defensible space inspections. Already in this city, we inspect every parcel in the very high fire severity zone. That's over 14,000 parcels that we go out annually for the past 3 years and determine if they're in compliance or not in compliance. And we have a live map that shows if anybody's in compliance. Anecdotally, I've been on 2 vegetation fires since I was here as the chief that were in a non-compliant parcel that stopped at a compliant parcel. I mean, that's only 2 data points, but that's science to me, right? Like, all of us that are firefighters know that, yes, if you don't have vegetation that can burn, the vegetation will not spread to your property. Unless there's a 100-mile-an-hour wind, and then that's like telling the fire department not to make sure houses don't get wet in a hurricane. You know, when you have that kind of natural disaster, there's only so much we can do. So with the new maps, with this increase, we're going to do defensible space inspections in all of the very high fire severity zone and high fire severity zone. That has more strict standards on how we clear our properties. Largely in the colony, however, it's all landscaped. We don't really have much of an issue. Along the golf courses is somewhere area that we ride up every year. Some of the drainages and the riparian areas we ride up every year, and we're making some headways in getting those areas cleared as well. Fire department can't go on and clear those privately owned parcels, but we can tell people what they have to do in those parcels. Where the bigger thing is, and you're gonna throw rotten tomatoes at me here in a minute, there's another thing, another ordinance that is tied to this, and that's called Zone 0, and you will start hearing about this. Zone 0 is a regulation that if it's in very high or high fire severity zones, this is being developed right now. It was supposed to be done in 2023, and again, 23 plus 2, we're already 2 years late on this, but it basically says that around any home in the very high fire severity zone, there must be nothing combustible within 5 feet of that home. That means hedges. That means anything you store next to your house, sheds. That also means fences that are combustible. That means there's a lot there. Those regulations, so if your house wasn't built to current building standards, the fire department can't come in and say, you have to put in new windows because the fire code says now in this area you need new windows. It's called existing non-conforming. We can't go to make those changes. With vegetation, however, in this Zone 0, it will be mandated that fire departments bring people into compliance within 3 years. So we will have to go out, inspect the community, and let people know when they're not in compliance with these regulations. I'll give a great example. I did a presentation on this at a Cal Cities conference. I painted my house not too long ago, and part of that, I had to go through the whole HOA process, get approved, everything. I got approved, and I said, I'm in the very high fire severity zone. I'm going to just set a good example and cut down my hedges. I cut down my hedges, and my HOA had a complaint letter to me by Wednesday. I did it on Sunday. So my HOA wrote me up for being in compliance and also doing what they'd approved me to do. They also told me I needed to paint my house because the hedges had been cut down, and I applied to paint my house. That's what started this whole thing. We're gonna see that. We're gonna see that a lot. What we're really trying to do, these ordinances, like I said, are being developed right now, and what we're trying to do is make sure that whatever the ordinances are, the insurance companies accept those. Because what we don't want to happen, we don't want our fire inspection bureau to come out, inspect your property and say, you have a gold star, you've done everything right. 2 days later, you get cancellation from your insurance because you haven't done something they want. So my industry, the fire industry, is working hard to get the insurance companies at the table to say, this is our these standards are going to be tough. This is our one time we have to do it. We have to get it right, and it has to be done in a way that will make sure that all of you keep your insurance. Because I don't, as the fire chief, I won't feel good about telling our residents to do things and then they still lose their insurance. And we're mandated. I mean, this is a law that we have to uphold just like the police department has to uphold certain laws as well. That's the shortest I can go on that long answer. But we will have those maps. We have 30 days as a municipality to put those publicly. They will be public. There will be an area for you to fill out a form and put in public comment. Please, even though we can't do anything about it, we will have that document with all of the public comment to take to our city council. We have to adopt these maps, so that the adoption process is 90 days after the 30 days. So we want to show our city council what our residents think. And even though we won't be able to act upon what you're saying, we do want your information. So please enter the info. And we'll share that out through all of our social media, through our newsletter, which we're going to get you all to sign up for the newsletter as well. More spam in your email inbox, but it's important to get the information.
There's already a link to it.
There is a link, but it's not a link to we're going to have a link to where our public comment is, and because we're a municipality, we have to keep record of all that, and it takes a little bit to make sure that we have it set up in a legal standard, because it becomes a public record once you write it. Also remember that. Use nice words. Use the words you need to, but this will be presented to City Council. It will be a publicly available document once you type it into a city's website. How are we doing? Hi, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
One of the things is that you brought up, Rachel, is of course, we're all having to make adjustments for climate change. I think we could all agree to that we're having more and more instances of high winds that are, at larger miles per hour gusts and things of this nature. So I think that probably in the future we can maybe agree that there will be more power outages. What do you feel, how do you feel about upgrading the systems here in the colony to have a fail-safe on our gates? When there is a power outage, the gates will automatically open. In the last one that you spoke about, Rachel, there were many people that were outside the colony that couldn't get back home because there were no fail-safes on the gates. Now, I can understand how when the colony was first built, that maybe wasn't even a consideration.
Sure.
But where we are today, how do you feel that should be a consideration?
That's actually current code. So if the colony was built today, that would be required. This is probably one of those existing non-conforming things, but certainly we can have our fire marshal work with the colony and look at what that would take.
Yeah. I think that there needs to be maybe some more communication on what our emergency preparedness teams should have, like solar generator, small refrigerator for medical supplies in case there's a shelter in place, things of that nature. I think that maybe there should be more communication.
And I know Rachel's worked closely with the team, so I think your team's pretty well prepared there, but we do find anytime an emergency, we find new situations. So we have to make note of those and build on them.
And I think maybe the most important thing that we forget about is that there's maybe good working relationships, but those working relationships don't get extended out to the community and communications. So the community is unaware of what is actually provided, what we should do, what contingency plans are, because like you say, there may, and actually, we used the Genesis program. When there was a vegetation fire last year east of
Los Alamos.
Exactly. And to where we could monitor what direction the wind was blowing in, and, we knew what zone we were in, and if we were going to be impacted. And it's a wonderful app. And we used that, and for people who didn't have the app, we sent that out to people via email. So that was a good thing. But as far as having different contingencies, for example, if there's a fire over there, street so-and-so should exit this gate and that gate. If there's a fire over there, street so-and-so should exit that gate and that gate. Just some sort of contingency thing that even though it isn't set in concrete, at least it's something gives people a sense that they have something to do and lessens the panic.
Absolutely. And I would say, as far as working relationships, we're all here. So I think that's, your fire department is invested in this community, which is why we're here today. So, we do have a great relationship with the emergency team here. I think that's some good insight about what do you want to see from your fire department and from your emergency team. Evacuations are somewhat easy to draw up a schematic like that. If you go into any hotel room, it says exit at the door you see at the end of the hallway, right? It's all the same, but that's required. So certainly something we could help with as well. The city is actually updating our safety element, which is the part of the general plan for a city. There's a million different plans we have to have in a city, but the safety element requires the evacuation element to be in there. So we're updating that in our city. It stays arterial. It doesn't go down into the feeder streets, which is a community like this, but we could certainly help.
It does need to be fluid, so.
It has to be fluid, and that's what Genesis does very well. It gives us a very fluid tool to address emergencies with. Thank you.
If you already answered this, I apologize, I can't hear very well. We were told by a realtor that there are certain areas within the colony that are part of a fire hazard zone.
Yes.
And others that are not. Could you?
The very high fire
comment on
severity
that?
zone, which this gentleman right here has a map. It's the top right corner of the colony, has a finger of the very high fire severity zone that comes in. I haven't looked specifically what changed with the new maps yet, but I know it pushed a little bit more into the colony. Those areas, one of the things you asked, what's the difference? The only difference is, from a realtor sell your home standpoint, is when you sell a home that's in the very high or now high fire severity zone, you have to have an inspection for fire compliance. So it's called an AB 38 because Assembly Bill 38 was the bill that mandated this. So we have dubbed those in the fire service industry AB 38 inspections, and that's what the realtors call them as well. And it's during the escrow process, just like you have to have a home inspection, you have to have a defensible space inspection, and the fire department does do those, and there is a cost for that because it takes an hour of our time to do that. So one of our inspectors comes out and does that inspection. So that will have an impactful change in the top right corner of the colony where it already has some existing requirement to have that. And when you sell your home, your realtor will say you need to contact the fire department and ask this, and you contact us, and we look it up in our system and say whether you need it or not. And we provide a letter saying you're in compliance or out of compliance. Ironically, the rules are not that you have to be in compliance, the rules are that you have to have the inspection. They left out a bullet where it got cut out at some point. Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you. Can we do a roaming mic as well for anybody that...
Yeah, have mobility problem
yeah,
like me?
mobility? Yeah. You're spry, you look good.
We moved down here a couple of years ago from up north, and they never changed your cell phones. It has a different area code.
Mm-hmm.
How do I dial 911?
911.
Just 911 will
911.
go locally?
911, well, it depends. That system works a little differently than your landline phone. 911, because you are this close to a freeway, you will likely get to CHP first. So when you call 911 with a cell tower that serves any interstate highway, so any freeway, we happen to have two, they're really busy. But when you serve one of those two freeways, that tower is going to first go to CHP. CHP will say 911, what's your emergency? And if you say it's medical, they will say standby, let me transfer. And then they transfer you automatically to our dispatch center in Murrieta because they'll have your address from
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to answer the question about the gates, We do have battery backup on the Cal Oaks gate. We do not have, or just the last board meeting, we approved battery backup at Nutmeg Gate. And if there's any time you can't get through one of those gates, always remember the front gate is always open anyway, so it's not that far a drive around. So we're covered in that
Good
aspect.
input. Thank you for doing that.
Hi.
How are you?
Sorry it took me so long. Watching all the fires in LA, the thing they kept bringing up was that the houses often catch on fire because the embers go through the vents in the roof. And I found a company that sells that material by the roll, and then you have to retrofit it into the screen that's on your vents. Mm-hmm. Do you have any comments on that or experience with it? Because I'm not finding anybody who knows how to do it either.
Any contractor can really do it. Our fire marshal actually has a presentation he does specifically on ember safe vents. And it's not just a screen, though that's helpful if you just roll a screen over the vent. They're vents that are designed, and I'm trying to do this with my hands. They look kind of like this. Oh, I'm not that flexible. They look kind of like this. So any ember coming in falls and it lands in a trough, so the ember does not go into your attic. What I can say is if you watch any fire that's a high wind fire, houses are burning from the top down. The reason they're burning from the top down is because of the introduction of embers into the attic. Our attics sit out here, especially in Inland Empire. When it's 110 degrees here, it's 140 or 150 degrees in our attics. Everything up there is cured, dried, and ready to burn. So anything we can do to prevent the introduction of embers into our attic spaces is leaps and bounds and improvement for the fire safety of your home. In fact, the insurance company, which I don't really want to get into that whole world of keeping your insurance, not getting your insurance canceled, although I can say your city is the only city in Riverside County that is a fire risk reduction community certified as that, so you should get a reduction in your homeowner's insurance because of that. We were given that recognition in July of last year. Another thing you would have seen if you were signed up for our newsletter. We're very proud of that, being one of only 11 cities in the state of California and the only city in Riverside County with that designation. Back to the homes burning down though, the insurance industry has a set of things they have a couple different standards they want to hold homeowners to, and they're trying to arrive on one. Hopefully they will soon, but on both of those standards that they have right now, one of the home mitigation steps you can take to lower your insurance rates is to put in resistant vents, because it makes a tremendous difference. And I mean, from watching on TV, you can see that, but for myself as a firefighter that has fought fires all over the state of California, I don't care what city I was in, if we were on a wind-driven Santa Ana fire, we were putting out house fires that the attics were on fire because of ember introduction.
When we had the wildfires, everyone was saying, how come the EPC doesn't have an evacuation plan? And basically, they're going to be with the bag, and they're going to be heading out of town too. When something like that happens, it's 100% up to fire department and police for the evacuation. Is that not true? Or do you expect anything from our group of volunteers?
We do not expect your group to do the evacuations. If you have evacuations, now if they want to assist, fantastic. Evacuations come under the direction of the authority having jurisdiction. In this case, in this city, it's the city of Marietta, specifically the fire department for fire evacuation, police department for other evacuations. But we are the authority that says you must evacuate, you should evacuate. That being said, if you are ever feeling like you're uncomfortable and you want to evacuate because you need more time, we're not stopping you from evacuating. If there's an emergency where you don't feel safe and you don't feel you're getting enough communication, feel free to leave. Because really, the worst thing you can do is wait to the very end to evacuate. But we're very good, and we're trying to be great about communicating in advance of these disasters. I mean, nobody in this room has been evacuated from the colony, and that's because we haven't evacuated the colony. The fires we've had that caused evacuations in our city have mostly been perimeter. They have not been the center of the city dictating or necessitating an evacuation of the colony.
I'm Glenn Gerber. I'm with the Access and Control Committee of the colony here. And this is a timely meeting. Yesterday, we were trained, again, we're trained annually to open the gates if the power goes out. So for everybody, before we get to fail-safe, if we get it, we get a call, and there's a group of us, about 8 of us, that can open the gates in a timely manner. It can be down there within minutes. So I just wanted everybody to know that.
It's great. Thank you. And for everybody here, if you're ever worried about the fire department getting in, if the power's out or anything, we have ways, we have special keys we can get in, our opticoms work, and if nothing else, those big red fire engines can push right through that gate. We're not worried about it.
Hi, can you clarify fire-resistant fencing? We have wrought iron, block wall, vinyl, and wood.
First 2 are good, the second 2 are bad.
Oh, the vinyl.
So vinyl is not considered fire resistant, and wood is not considered fire resistant.
I knew wood, but
So
I didn't know about vinyl.
With this zone 0 is probably what you're referring to. What it looks like the regulations are going to be, and I'm following, but the regulations aren't out yet. It's still in the comment period. But it looks like the fences that are immediately touch your house, not are that parallel. It looks like they're going to leave parallel fences alone, which is great because it's very expensive to replace those. Even if they're within 5 feet of your home, those look like they're going to be left alone. And again, I need to air quotes this because these regulations are not accepted yet. They're in the development phase, but close.
Okay.
The fences that touch the home,
Okay.
those are going to be required to be either block wall or some sort of non-combustible material, which would be basically block or metal.
So our
And-
gates, we can't have a vinyl gate?
Gates can't be vinyl, right, within
Okay.
5 feet of the home. Oh, I just put in a new fence too,
Okay.
not too long ago. So
Okay.
I know the expense, and that's where I stand here, fire chief, and say,
Right.
eventually I'm going to come to you and say, here's what you have to do.
Okay.
Because we're being dictated. What's that?
For replacing a fence or building a new one, or?
Both. Or existing. Because these regulations have a 3-year window when they're, and there's been an executive order that says you will get these done. Newsom put that executive order out.
Okay.
And when that comes in place, those regulations have 3 years to be completed retroactively, and then we have to go in and do the enforcement side of that.
So is our zone 0 that all of us, or that
Top corner.
that top
The
corner?
top corner.
So if they live in that top corner and they have a wood gate, which is what touches their home, it has to go.
It will have to go likely if the regulations are adopted the way they are written right now.
Okay.
They have not been adopted. I think they will be. What I would watch closely for, the state knows this is a huge expense.
Right.
And I mean, we're looking at Murrieta. This is the state of California. What's our population? What is the population in the very high fire severity zone? Everyone has to do this. Invest in a metal fencing company is going to be my recommendation. I can't do it because I'm too close. But really, the state's going to come out with programs. I can almost guarantee that. If they have to, for populations that can't afford to bring themselves into compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
can you go over mandatory evacuation in the event that we do have to evacuate, and the fire department and police department say mandatory evacuation? Some people do not understand what that means because there's some different interpretation. So can you go over that?
Sure.
please?
Mandatory is exactly how it sounds. You are required to leave. What a mandatory evacuation means is you have to leave your home. We cannot, however, physically come in, pick you up, and take you out of your home. We're not allowed to do that. Fire department isn't allowed to do that. The police department is not allowed to do that. So people sometimes ignore mandatory evacuations. What I can tell you is if an area is under mandatory evacuation and we have a fire hitting it and we have a fire that's moving towards an area that's not evacuated, guess where we're not going to put the fire engines? Into the area that we know is evacuated. Because we have limited resources, so we need to spread them around. When something is evacuated, we will likely look at that as and this is the Colony is not a great example of this because it's a very easy to serve neighborhood. You have hydrants everywhere, we have plenty of clearance. So don't take this as we're not going to defend the Colony. But if there's a mandatory evacuation in an area that's a little more rural, doesn't have good water supply, we've drawn the line somewhere else. So we're going to stop that fire, not up there in the mandatory evacuation. We're going to stop it somewhere else, probably in that zone, but not out on the edge, because it's not as easy for us to do that, and we would be unsuccessful. So it's really important to understand mandatory evacuations mean we need you to leave so we can get in there and do our job and not be impacted by people that are waiting until they see the fire to leave, because then you're blocking us coming in, and you're blocking our ability to do work. We need to be able to put hoses out around houses to protect houses, and we can't do that if people are driving out over our fire hoses. That's why we do the mandatory evacuation. Does that answer your question, sir?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Excuse the old man, Gimp. John Dricker. Let's go back to the attic for a minute. What about the attic fans with, they're set to go off at a certain temperature and then to supposedly clear the hot air out of the attic?
Yeah.
What about, should they have the entrance of the fan sucking the air in? Should they have that screening on there?
So there's two different types of those. One's like the whole house fan that draws air from the inside of the home.
Oh, no, this is the out.
And then you have the exhaust fans that are built into the attics that turn on at certain temperatures.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
What you want to create with the attics, and this is what the building code dictates actually, is just a sealed, not a sealed envelope because it has to breathe, but an ember impenetrable envelope on your attic.
So stop that.
Stop that. Anywhere an ember can get into the attic, that's what the vents do. They want to keep embers out of that attic space.
I know. So they should have that protected.
They would need the same sort of ember resistant vent.
Because we have a fan and it's just, you can stand outside and if you had
it kicks on and blows air in. You would need a vent on the backside of that fan as well, right?
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Do you want clarification on that?
In a fire, you have to shut off the fans on your attic or leave them on?
I would shut everything off. You want your home to be as airtight as possible when you have a fire. It will get hot in there, but I mean...
I've got fans and they blow out on each end.
They blow out on each end, but anytime you have a window or a vent, even a screen, it becomes a penetration point for an ember. And that's really, we're talking about wind-driven fires here. We're talking about the example we just had of the Eaton and the Palisades fire. Fires where embers the size of baseballs and embers the size of are blowing through the air at 100 miles an hour. Those are looking for penetration points into your structure. So anything you can do to keep those from getting into your structure is what you should do. So close the windows, close up the house as tight as you can if there's a fire that's going to be impacting your home.
Hi. You mentioned something about limited facilities. I've been here 20 years. This was country when I moved in. And if you've driven down Jefferson, Washington, Los Alamos, the thousands of new apartments or condos, whatever they are you prepared for that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we are seeing our city grow, as I mentioned, right? Like we've seen our call volume go up, our call volume is continuing to grow, our population is continuing to rise, our traffic is continuing to rise. What you have is a city council that's invested in you, in the community, in the fire department, the police departments. Public safety is one of the primary considerations for our city, so we're certainly growing our fire department with it. So a lot of what's being built in the city now, as everyone has seen, is the more mid-rise, 4 stories and up. We just purchased a $2.4 million truck, that's how much a fire engine costs now, that goes 100 feet instead of 75, which is our current ladder, and that's an investment in the changing type of fires that we will see in our community. So absolutely,
You've noticed the growth.
You've noticed. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. Not unmissed. I drive past those every day on my way to work.
Hi, Bernie.
Hi, Sharon.
I was a healthcare emergency manager, so I want to say a couple of things to add on to what Rachel spoke about. One, keep at least a half a tank of gas in your car, or have your car charged if you have an electric car. Because if you have to evacuate and the power is out, the gas stations don't work. They work on electricity. I know a gas station in San Diego County that had a generator. I don't know about Riverside County.
It's uncommon.
But keep that in mind. And two, make sure you have a plan and you have the supplies. You saw the list up there. That's probably my biggest pet peeve when I was teaching this is some people didn't even have a flashlight and batteries. So get your supplies. Thanks.
I won't out Sharon, but what a tremendous resource you have in your community here. Really. Before I was the chief here in Murrieta, I worked in San Diego County for 22 years, and literally Sharon trained me to be a paramedic, so
One other thing, as a healthcare emergency manager, I can tell you that if you're on a piece of medical equipment in your house that requires electricity, it is the responsibility of your healthcare provider to make sure to work with you on a plan for backup. So you shouldn't be calling this team and saying, I can't run my whatever equipment. That should already be taken care of by your healthcare provider and you when that equipment is assigned to you. It happens. They should do that. Okay?
That's great to know. Thank you, Sharon.
Absolutely. Chief, one other question.
Yes, sir.
During the fires in Palisades, it came to light that the hydrants weren't pumping out as much water as they should have. We have two different water companies servicing the community.
Mm-hmm.
Do you check, and if you do, how often do you check the hydrant and the pressure in the hydrants to make sure that we're getting a sufficient power?
Yeah, we actually have 4 different water companies in the city, 2 in the colony. So it's a city with 4 water districts, which is not typical, but that's how we landed because we used to be a county before we were a city over 30 years ago. So to answer your question, it's amazing how close the water districts have become to the fire department following the Palisades. Boy, I picked up the phone and I had the CEOs of these companies wanting to talk to me. So we're in great communication with all of our water district partners. We're well served by water here. And we do test the hydrants regularly. Generally, the water district tests those hydrants and does flow testing. We test them in areas throughout the community as we do training. One of the things I can tell you, though, and this is just the reality of a system, fire hydrants are not designed for every fire hydrant to be flown at once. The pipe underneath fire hydrants this big. That is a great example when you fill a pool. I fill the pool in my backyard, and my daughter will yell at me because she doesn't have pressure in the shower, right? There is only so much water coming into the home, and there's only so much water coming into that hydrant system. So when we have a great hydrant system here. Our city's only 32 years old, so a lot of the development here is as good as it gets as far as it goes with water hydrants. But when you have every hydrant being opened at once, you will have lower volume. And that's just physics. You cannot design a system big enough without making it cost billions of dollars that would allow every hydrant to open at once. And that's just the reality. Now, we're judicious with water in these wildland fires. The problem that they saw again, and you haven't heard, I've been on hydrants before where the hydrant pressure drops because of what we're doing. Wildland fires especially, I've been on hydrants where the water tank you were on ran out of water. But what we haven't seen a lot, and the media covered very well this time, is when neighborhoods are burning down, it's a different story than when trees are burning down, because we use water differently when you're trying to put out an entire house that's on fire than you are when you're just putting out vegetation that's on fire. So to answer your question, we have a great water system in the city, but also just understand that those hydrants having low pressure, that's physics. And I don't know a water company on earth that could have made it so an entire neighborhood being on fire would have had every hydrant with top pressure. It's just not how it works.
Just one more thing on the water. Are we on wells as a city, or are they wells or tanks?
A combination of both and a water feed. So there's the California Water Aqueduct is right out here. We get water from that, and the Water District can answer this better. The tanks you see up on the hills, they're up on the hills because they pump water up to them at night, and then they have a lot of pressure. The head pressure brings the water down. We have wells that feed those throughout the community. So we have a really good water supply here in the Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Can I just bring up one little...
And this is only because you are here right now.
I feel lucky.
Yes. Weather is getting warm, summer's around the corner, and even though this is off topic, we discussed this last year. Are you going to promote your pool safety program again this year?
Water Watchers, great pool safety program.
Was this
we don't have
like
them with
coordinated?
us. Yeah, that was well done. Ray actually developed our Water Watchers program. So for those of you that don't know, and those of you that have grandkids that visit, we have a program through the city called Water Watchers, where you can get for free a Water Watchers tag, water safety information, and that tag is so you have at least one person at all times that's wearing it and that is assigned to keeping eyeballs on the pool, because drowning is silent. And for any of us that have ever taken a baby out of a pool, there's nothing more horrific, and it's always somebody that turned their back for 1 second.
I did bring brochures and a couple of the lanyards here, and for some reason the HOA decided not to do anything with it. But so you will be promoting it again this year.
We're going to be promoting it. It'll be on all of our socials. And if I can end with something, we want to communicate with you, but we, luckily enough, live in an area where there is no news media. There's not, I am still not accustomed to the fact that we have fires and no news shows up. I used to have news reporters beat me to fires and have a microphone up to my window as I was trying to run the fire. We don't have that here. So we look for channels to communicate with you. One of the channels we have is we have a monthly newsletter. Everything we've talked about here has been in our newsletters over the past couple of months. All of the information about Know Your Zone, become a subscriber, what apps to use, our AM radio system that we have that we didn't even get to, reverse 911, all of that lives in our monthly newsletter. It's the middle one there. Become a subscriber. You can go to our website. You can call our office. I don't want there to be any barrier to entry for us to communicate with you, but outside of the monthly meetings where we get to come once in a while, we really want to provide the information and have everyone access it, share it with your friends. We want you to know what we're doing, and we want you to know what your fire department can do for you. So please sign up. Coffee with the City we go to. The format has changed a little bit now. So Coffee with the City is done by the Chamber of Commerce. They invite the city. I used to update it every Coffee with the City. However, now we go to every couple. They wanted to highlight on each department. April 22nd, I believe, the fire department will be at Coffee with the City. So this next Coffee with the City, we will be there as well. But we want to communicate with you. We just don't have a news channel that is doing it regularly for us. Although KCAL did come out and cover our fire risk reduction community, so you can see that one on the news. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I want to thank everybody for coming out, especially Chief Molloy. Thank you so much. I hope you all got your questions answered. It looks like you have some good questions, and you hope you have some idea of what you need to do in case there is an emergency here. Thank you all very much, and don't forget he has some handouts back there, and sign up for his newsletter, please. Everyone, newsletter. Get on it. Thank you.